Great Britain, an island nation. It's been a boiling pot of culture clashes for over a millennia, home to many recognisable historical sites such as Stonehenge, Sutton Hoo, and a host of other castles and artefacts. With such a rich history, museums are commonplace throughout the country, and be it a school trip or tourist visit, many people, both domestic or international, have likely visited one of these institutions. However, one look at these places and you soon realise that many are founded on artefacts from many countries. In fact, take a walk around the British Museum and you'll see the real physical history of places besides the British Isles. How and why do these artefacts come to be in these places, and why do they represent a historical struggle that is still ongoing today? To answer why these artefacts are in British possession, one has to travel back in time, back to the beginning of the British Empire. The Empire proper began sometime in the 1700s and was established as a global power by the early 1800s. It spanned the globe and included the hostile takeover of a number of nations such as the USA, Canada, and India, among many others. This period saw Britain gain control of 24% of the Earth's total land area. At its peak, it was known as the Empire on which the sun never sets. This period saw the forceful export of English language, culture, and people across the world in a process known as colonization. It also watched over the import of artifacts of cultural importance. These acquisitions took place in many forms, such as archaeological discoveries, legal purchases, and looting. Some of these methods are now seen as illegal, or at least ethically distasteful. But this all took place during a period of time when this was the done thing, resulting in profit and recognition back home in the UK. However, the empire didn't last and saw a decline throughout the 20th century, particularly after the two world wars. This period, known as decolonization, saw events such as India gaining independence in 1947, and many say empire and decolonization ended in 1997 when Hong Kong returned to China. But the damage has been done, and decolonization, despite receiving more coverage, still has a long road to go. When it comes to the artefacts found in British museums that came from colonized countries, why haven't they been returned or repatriated? Under international law, such as the Conventions of 1970 and 1995, the UN has declared the way in which these artefacts came to be in the UK as illegal. Unfortunately, these laws don't apply before they were made. Despite this, many countries are still asking for the return of their cultural artefacts. One such country is Nigeria and the Kingdom of Benin. The Kingdom of Benin, located in what is now modern-day Nigeria, found itself within the British sphere of influence in the late 1800s. Due to the kingdom not welcoming the British forces, they found themselves under heavy attack in 1897, with Benin being destroyed and suffering heavy losses, including the royal palace being burnt down. At the same time, the British soldiers looted a great number of artifacts with cultural significance. Some of these artifacts are known as the Benin Bronzes, a collection of brass, wood, and ivory plaques or depictions of royal heads that were looted in their thousands, finding their way into private collections and institutions around the world. Perhaps most famously, the British Museum. Nigeria and Benin gained full independence from Britain half a century later in 1960. But their cultural heritage was still stolen and scattered. Although there is still hope, over 100 Benin bronzes were held in Cambridge University institutions until recently, when Jesus College became the first institution in the world to return a Benin bronze to Nigeria in October of 2021. In a continuation of this trend, the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology in Cambridge has been working with representatives of the National Commission of Museums and Monuments of Nigeria in an effort to return the remaining 100 or so Benin bronzes to their rightful homes, with some staying on an extended loan. These acts of repatriation have been replicated around the world, with a number of museums now choosing to return the stolen Benin bronzes. Though the Benin bronzes are just the tip of the iceberg, and many acts of repatriation aren't as clear at first glance. For instance, take the Parthenon or Elgin marbles. a series of friezes taken from the Parthenon in Greece between 1801 and 1812. They were taken by agents of the Earl of Elgin, who sold them to the British Museum. He acquired them from Greece with an official agreement with the Ottoman Empire. This, though, is controversial, as despite being agreed upon as legal by the British government, the agreement was made between two colonizing powers, and the power dynamics in place make the entire situation seem like extortion. Greece has been attempting to have the marbles returned since 1835, but as of today in 2023, they have yet to be returned by the British Museum. In recent years, support for all forms of repatriation has been growing amongst the public and academics. In fact, when speaking to Dr. Graham Barker, the Disney Professor Emeritus of Archaeology at Cambridge University, the situation seemed rather clear.
In terms of museum collections, I mean, it's quite clear that when you've got objects which have been acquired by, in effect, theft or military action, when clearly the Benin bronzes have sometimes fallen in that category after the sacking of the site, there's absolutely no question but these things should be returned. But I also think in the more contentious cases, although there may sometimes have been legal decisions, legal pacts made, legal arrangements about heritage coming from a colonised country to the coloniser, those power relations in retrospect are clearly so problematical that, again, which is why I'm very sympathetic to the debates now going on about how finally the Parthenon marbles can be considered to be returned with whatever arrangements the two museums make, because it just seems to me that yes, they were brought legally, but a legal arrangement in a totally different kind of colonial power context.
So what stops repatriation from taking place? What arguments are being made in opposition to the return of artefacts? The main argument, particularly in the case of the British Museum, is a legal one. Government acts such as the British Museum Act of 1963 prevents the Board of Trustees in the case of the British Museum from returning any artefacts permanently. Similarly, the acquisition of many artefacts is seen as dubiously legal, and therefore it is the museum's right to retain possession and display it, such as is the case with the Parthenon marbles. Another reason that is often given is that Western museums are better equipped to preserve and protect artefacts. However, with time, this is becoming less and less true, with many previously colonized nations now constructing or have already constructed extensive museum facilities. Once again, in the case of the Parthenon marbles, they were actually damaged while in the British Museum a number of times. Finally, another of the most common reasons that is given against the repatriation of artefacts is the authenticity of cultural claims. Some individuals argue that because there is no direct cultural link between the modern day people and the people of the past, they do not have a right to that cultural heritage. But in that case, in what way do museums in the UK and the Western world have a better claim? Despite leaps forward in recent years, such as the worldwide step towards returning the Benin bronzes, and discussions regarding the return of the Parthenon marbles reopening just a few months ago, the road to repatriation is a long one, and there are many artefacts besides the ones discussed that should be returned. Looking forward, the steps seem to be decolonization of education, alongside making these debates more public. The success that has been seen with the Benin bronzes and the Parthenon marbles seems to be at least somewhat due to pressure from public opinion. So get the word out there. We might be one step closer to true globalization of cultural ideals, and a world in which these discussions are irrelevant.